Okay, awesome, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to another segment of AEC Plus Tech Talk. You all can hear me, right? Okay, I think we are now live. Perfect. So these talks are organized by AC Plus Tech, a platform and community established to help you stay updated and engaged with the latest tools and technologies within the building industry. Today, we are joined by 4 great panelists who are all experienced investors and innovators in the AEC and construction tech space. We are going to learn from their experience and insight, and we'll also ask them for their thoughts on the future of innovation within the built world. This event will be recorded and saved on AC Plus Tech YouTube channel. If you have any questions for our panelists during the event, please feel free to post them in the LinkedIn or YouTube chat box, and we will do our best to answer them in the Q&A portion at the end. So I'm going to start the conversation by asking some questions from our panelists. I'm actually going to start by asking everyone about your background and your company, and I'll start by Mark. So after Mark, maybe we can go to Austin, and then Noelle and Randy at the end. So Mark, please tell us about yourself and about Heartland.
Sure, happy to do so. Hi everyone, my name is Mark Acomando and I'm a partner here at Heartland Ventures. Heartland is a venture capital firm based in the Midwest, actually started in South Bend, Indiana, and now have operations in Indianapolis, Indiana, as well as Columbus, Ohio. Our fund is focused on connecting early stage startups, technology companies in the industrial sector. So think construction, manufacturing, logistics, and real estate to traditional Midwestern based corporations. Think established multi-generational family business, private corporations located throughout the Midwest that we believe are going to be great customers, early adopters, and really compelling users and champions on behalf of these startups. What we like to do in our investment thesis is really validate the usefulness of the solution as it relates to the pain point and the severity of that problem in these businesses, and use that as a way to really validate product market fit. So we make a few investments across our portfolio, all of which were extremely hands-on on product market fit, go-to-market strategy, and then ultimately, helping them grow through their business development efforts. I'll pass off to Austin, who's also a teammate of mine and works on the other side of the business, where I spend the majority of my time focused on new investments, deal sourcing, and diligence. Austin handles the other side of our business.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and nice to meet you all and be with you today. Austin Westerfeld, and I stay focused primarily, as Mark said, he's more so on the diligence and deal sourcing side of things, and him and his team handle that. I stay primarily focused on helping the portfolio companies that have already come into the fold, and then also primarily focused on developing our relationships with our corporate partners, really understanding their challenges, their pains, their needs, and their workflows, and really even getting as deep into things such as strategic initiatives so that we might be able to feed that back to our deal sourcing and deal flow team to better understand what technology is really going to make sense for our corporate partners. And then obviously with that, a lot of the value that we provide our portfolio and our unique value prop is very much so focused around connecting our portfolio companies with those corporate partners so that they can become early customers in the technology, but then also, doing things like becoming beta customers, providing feedback, which is all obviously very critical in the early stages. So that kind of rounds out the main focuses of the Heartland team, with Mark being on the deal side and deal sourcing, and myself in what we call platform, but really more so the business development of our portfolio companies and the relationships with our corporate partners.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love how you are filling the gap between the industry and the tech world. It's a great model that Heartland is following and is establishing, really. I haven't heard of any other company, any other VC company who is doing that, working with both sides very closely. So Noelle, can you tell us about ProjectMark and how you are working with Heartland?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Noelle Brady. I'm one of the co-founders here at ProjectMark. And what we are is a sales and marketing platform, but we're built specifically for construction companies. And really what we're focused on is bringing a higher quality sales infrastructure to the industry. And so at the core of what we provide is this construction specific smart content management system. And on top of that, we just layer on a series of synergistic products that really allow us to utilize that data in a much more effective way. Some of those products are proposal software, mini website builders, and a smart way to manage your portfolio overall. For me, prior to founding ProjectMark, I spent about 10 years in the industry, working across the Irish, the UK, and the US markets. Most recently here in the US with a company called Tishman Construction out of New York, working as a project manager. So really striving to utilize and leverage some of my real life experience to solve actual pain points in the industry. And we've been lucky enough to be one of Heartland's portfolio companies and having a great relationship so far.
Wonderful, great, thank you, Noel. So, Randy, hi, welcome. So,
Good
please
afternoon.
tell us about yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I am a vice president here at Elford Incorporated, and we're a 112-year-old construction manager, general contractor, headquartered in Central Ohio. We also have offices in Charlotte, North Carolina as well. And we're really just a relationship-based contractor that operates primarily in the healthcare, the higher ed, K-12, multifamily, commercial market sectors, trying to do good work for our clients to help them, live their mission each day.
Thanks, Randy. Can you tell us a bit more about your projects and you said about the type of projects that you work on? So where are they located mostly? What are the sizes?
So we absolutely. So the market sectors I mentioned are really the kind of projects we do. We do projects of all sizes. So we have a special projects group that does projects that are more modest in size. They could be $1 million or so. And then we do projects as large as a little over $100 million. We do a wide range of project sizes. Project types today, we have large mixed-use developments that might include retail, commercial office, and multifamily housing. We have projects that are hospitals and healthcare, so true hospital projects or medical office building projects, things of that nature. We do some life sciences work, so research facilities, laboratories, things like that. K-12 schools, higher education buildings, which could be anything from dormitories to classroom buildings or laboratories, or anything in between. I know I'm missing something, but certainly just commercial building contracting generally. So we're very diverse in the projects we pursue and execute.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So I'll get back to you with more questions. So I think in Austin, what do you think has made the construction technology ecosystem unique in the Midwest as compared to the coast? So Noelle, if you don't mind going.
Absolutely. For me, I think the ecosystems are actually quite similar. Where I think the differences actually come in is the early access to these technologies. Thanks to Heartland, we've been actually able to have a lot of conversations with companies in the Midwest. And what you soon find out is that the pain points are actually similar. The striving for progress, the need for these issues to be addressed are similar both on the coast and in the Heartland. And really what that allows us to see is that there's opportunities everywhere. It's just giving companies access to this technology. Some of our earliest adopters operate in the Heartland. Companies who have really informed our product roadmap are operating in the Heartland, but don't quite always have the same access to technology as more often than not, some of the companies, a lot of the funds are on the coasts. And so naturally it just starts there, but just due to the nature of construction, it does become regional, national, and international. And the pain is always the same. The striving for progress is the same, but just not always the access is there.
Yeah, and
great, thank you. Awesome.
Noel, I can go ahead and piggyback off of that. as well. From where I sit, one thing that's been really interesting when evaluating the way that the tech ecosystem operates within the Midwest, specifically within construction, is not only are companies throughout the Midwest, yearning for access to this technology because they've been largely looked over in the development of this technology. I mean, it's very obvious that most of the technology that is being developed for the industry is being developed on the coast, right? So they're yearning for the technology, but one very, very unique thing about the Midwest is really the density of privately held and privately owned businesses, which changes the dynamic of a sales cycle for an early stage startup when approaching these companies. There's a very clear line to decision making, right? It's well understood. Typically, the owner is ingrained enough in the business to where they might still have an operating role, and they also possess the decision-making power. So the feedback that you're getting from these privately held businesses within the Midwest is feedback that for publicly traded companies, some of the feedback, or at least if you're getting a no, it's to kind of shoo you away and get you out the door. And you might not know what the truth is, right? But for these privately held businesses, they want to get the technology to a point where it can really service and help their business. So you're going to get real feedback from an individual that is not only the decision maker, but they're ingrained in the business at the operating level. And that's very powerful and definitely one thing that makes the construction tech ecosystem stand out in the Midwest.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Austin and Noelle. So my next question is for Randy. Randy, tell us how your company thinks about implementing new technology. How do you prioritize new technology implementation?
Sure, be glad to. So, construction firms, we work in an industry that is very high risk. Margins are tight. Competition is still fierce, even though there's we're in a business boom for ourselves for many years now. Competition is still very tight. When we look at different applications of technology, we look at how can that technology help us mitigate our risk. How can it be cost effective? Is it reimbursable for us? Can we put it into our contract cost? And what's the end result for us? That's really what we're looking for. How do we increase productivity? How do we mitigate risk? And how do we make that cost-effective proposition for our clients and ourselves?
Got it. So do you have a formal process for implementing new technologies, or is it just on a case-by-case basis?
Really a case-by-case basis. I think one of the things we do is we obviously have connections and peer partners across the country, so we share information with one another as we each try different applications or different technologies in our day-to-day business. And oftentimes we will do a beta test and implement something on one project and track the data associated with that and see how it works out and see if it makes sense to implement company-wide.
And then how large is the company, Randy, and how difficult is it to like follow this adoption of technology within your firm, like internally?
It's not difficult for us. We have a couple hundred employees, so we have a technology committee that leads that charge, and of course they're getting data information from various levels of the company that are implementing the technology. So it's really not that difficult for us to track and manage that.
Got it. And my last question for you, what data points do you track? What is like the most important for you when you are testing these new tools?
But it just depends on what the tool is. That's a pretty broad question.
Yeah.
So I think it would depend on, depending on what we're looking at, we would try to find some KPIs that are associated with that tool versus how we're doing it today, whether that's with existing technology or the lack thereof, depending on what we're talking about. And we would try to develop KPIs and track those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So the next question is for actually the Heartland team, for Austin and Mark. So please tell us how your firm discovers emerging technologies and software in the construction industry. Maybe Austin can go first with pain points.
Sure. As I alluded to in the introduction, a lot of what we do is staying closely connected to our corporate partners, right? We're running what some might call a discovery session on them, but it's really at the overall business level to understand what pains they're experiencing, to understand what challenges they might be having, and then to be able to map that on the back end to technology that's coming across our desk that can make sense. And for a lot of, especially early stage technology, a lot of these things are groundbreaking, right? So you have to take the conversation away from, what's the state of your business today, and really try to advance the conversation to like, how do you think the business is going to be in 5 years? What sort of, for example, robotics are you going to be using in the construction process? How do you think that's going to impact the overall sphere of technology within the firm? So it's really trying to get down deep into the weeds of all those levels, and to be able to harvest those pains and those challenges so that, I can virtually throw them over to Mark, and he can map those and align those to some of the early stage technology that he's seeing.
Yeah, I think uniquely about Heartland, we have the idea, or we have the perspective of me being based in New York and living on the coast, plugged into the technology ecosystem, can understand what's happening, what's trending, what's new and exciting, and then really uncover what are the challenges or the pain points that those types of technologies are trying to solve, and then passing them over to Austin and his team to really dig in with the corporations and prove those pain points really exist, and validate the severity of those challenges. So we're, as much as we'd like to think we can walk into any construction company and have them rattle off a list of their problems and we can go pick and choose the best solutions, it doesn't really work like that, right? We don't know enough about construction. We haven't been doing it our entire lives to be able to plug in everything that's a great fit. It's a lot of give and take, and all of these lead to what we consider to be discovery discussions, where we're just constantly learning and evolving our process, where a bunch of different pain points that Austin would have uncovered now help me paint a pretty clear picture on the types of technologies that are existing out there that can be more broad-based and more platform-oriented around solving these underlying business challenges, but also open up the market to some really more interesting and more compelling opportunities for them in the future. Having said that, there's a ton of conversations that we're having. I do believe that the construction technology ecosystem is extremely collaborative, more so than a lot of the other ecosystems where we have folks like you putting together this AEC plus Tech Talk, where we want to be open and transparent. We want to share as much as what we know about the Midwestern construction and real estate businesses as we can, and put our heads together to come up with what we believe to be the most compelling solutions, particularly at the earlier stage. So a lot of investors in this sector, or accelerators, or even other founders that we've gotten to know, are constantly sharing challenges, insights, opportunities, and putting our heads together to come up with what we believe could be the most impactful. I think you tend to get to know the folks in this space really well because it is such a small community, that the give and take, the back and forth, not a great fit for me, but might be a great fit for you and your partners, is exactly how we fit into the ecosystem, but exactly how we are able to translate value back from the people that are sharing opportunities, new startups with us on the coasts, to our partners in the Midwest, and back and forth, and be that translator of the communications happening on both sides, and being that bridge, bringing those two communities together. We really want to ensure that we maintain that dual perspective in everything we do, because the transparency part and the over communication element is essential to just the industry being able to be even more successful than it already is.
Yeah, for sure. And Mark, how do you keep yourself updated? I'm curious, how do you personally follow these trends? Do you keep attending events and like following people on social media? What is your best source of information?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. I wouldn't be in a position to say what the best is. I think the truth is it's an amalgamation of a lot of things. There's
Yeah.
quite a few newsletters and articles that you can subscribe to and keep in touch with. There's plenty of events. I think that this is probably one of the most active communities in terms of events and programming out there. There's small regional events. There's larger national, international events around construction technology, and I think it's the close knit, the closeness of the community. It's actual person to person conversations that's where a lot of the brainstorming happens. So there's a few folks and programs on LinkedIn that are absolutely worth following. There's definitely some firms, venture firms, corporate venture firms that do great content that they'll share either on LinkedIn or via newsletters that keep you really in the know. And because we have relationships with folks on the other side, you read something and then you pick up the phone and you call and you ask questions and you begin a dialogue. And it's really the constant conversations and the constant activity that I think gives us really good perspective of what's interesting and what's happening. It's rare that things slip through the cracks that someone knew and didn't share, because a lot of different folks bring very unique perspective to these conversations, whether you're an expert in the technology, an expert in the industry, an expert in the go-to-market strategy. You can put 3 or 4 heads together and create a real all-star team around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So our next question is for actually Noelle and Randy. The construction industry is infamously known for being a slow-moving one with regards to adopting new technologies. So what patterns do you see in the space right now? Maybe Noelle can start and then Randy.
Absolutely. So it definitely is notoriously slow moving, but there is for sure a noticeable shift. But in terms of the patterns I'm seeing, there is so much technology being adopted into the same segments of the market as we're seeing. And what that is doing is it's actually highlighting some underserved areas. And essentially what I mean by that, when I look at the construction industry, typically it's split up into pre-construction, construction, and handover. But there is obviously a fourth segment of the market there, which is work acquisition. And if you think about it, pre-construction, construction, and handover is where the vast majority of technological investment and tech adoption is actually being seen in the market. And if you consider the current economic projections and what may be around the corner for our industry, when you think about it, a company's ability to acquire new work is going to become more important than ever, highlighting the fact that work acquisition is potentially the most important segment of our market in the near-term future. Well, that means, in my mind, with the patterns that I'm seeing, is our opportunities are going to become a little bit more scarce, and our owners, our developers are going to have a much higher level of scrutiny over the partners that they choose and the bid proposals that they receive. And essentially what that means is, at that point, the company's ability to really identify and acquire new work will not only become more difficult than ever, but it's going to become more important than ever. And that's why I think the pattern of the work acquisition segment of the market being neglected unnecessarily, or it's underserved when it really comes to tech adoption. And it's probably a pattern that we'll see change over the course of the next 12, 18, 24 months.
Interesting, great insight. Thanks, Noelle. Randy, what do you think?
Yeah, so absolutely, it's been very slow to adopt technology, but it's been getting progressively faster for many years. Starting back in the late 90s, early 2000s, even using relational databases was kind of high tech at the time, where in other industries it certainly was not. I think what's changed in recent years is the shift towards more technology being adopted in the field. So we're seeing more things with robotics and RFID technology, 360 capture, things like that is really starting to happen faster and faster. And really the the younger folks, the folks coming out of college today with engineering degrees, are really driving that much faster than previous generations, and it's pretty exciting to witness, and it's going to be a drastically different industry in the near future.
Yeah. Randy, do you see the pattern changing in your own company and in the companies that you are in contact with?
We do, absolutely. I know there was a comment earlier about, things tend to innovate more on the coast, and I think that is true. But I think that's changing and changing fairly quickly. So we are, I think, in the last 5-6 years, certainly I can speak to our firm, we are implementing technology immensely faster than we did probably in the 50 years prior. I mean, it's really moving quickly, and the tools available are changing and improving every day. So yes, change is happening much quicker in our firm and in our competitors and our subcontractors. And the subcontractors are really going to drive some of this even more than the construction managers and general contractors. On the field side, we're seeing layout robots and core drilling robots, and we're going to see more of that. And those things are starting to show up here. They're not commonplace yet, but it's definitely coming.
Got it. And can you tell us a bit about your adoption process? How does it usually work when you learn about a new technology through Heartland or through other, collaborators? How does it work? Do you always test it on a real world project, or there are pilot projects that you work on? Can you just tell us a bit, if it's okay?
Yeah. So it probably depends. It probably varies a little bit. I think we're going to look at what need does the technology, what problem does the technology help us solve, and then it's going to be an ROI analysis, like most purchases. So we're going to look at that, and then next it looks to be a promising technology, then it might be implemented on a test basis.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, perfect. And you said you have a team, right? You have an in-house research team or tech team,
we have a
person.
Yeah, we have a technology committee
Okay.
Yeah, so I think once we become aware of something that we feel meets a need to help us deliver our mission, then it might be escalated to that team, and they would start looking at the financial aspects of it and getting input from various team members on what the benefits could be.
Yeah, that's great that you have it, because not many firms have that committee or have that person. Really, not all firms have the resources. It's great that you have that research person or designated team that is doing that kind of research for you. It helps a lot, I think, with the process.
It does, and we were finding that because technology is growing so quickly, getting lots of asks from the staff, right? Heard about this thing, heard about that technology. So we had to centralize that a little bit and start a more analytical operation to go to market.
Yeah, for sure. There are all these categories of all these new technologies. The last architecture company that I worked with, we had the design tech committee, and then we had these 3 streams, and we had champions for each stream. So we had visualization, architecture, visualization, computational design, and sustainability. So for each stream, we had a person who was in charge of learning the latest and greatest. It was very helpful because energy modeling, there are all these tools and products out there. So that person would go test them and then would come back to our committee and give us a report. And the same for visualization, AR, VR, and computational design. So it's very helpful when you have these people in-house.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome, great, thank you. So our next question is for everyone, actually. So what are some of the emerging trends that you are keeping your eye on? How do you think it will impact construction and more specifically your business? So Mark, if you don't mind going first.
Sure, happy to. So I would say there's 3 main topics at the moment that we're keeping an extremely close eye on, but obviously always staying open-minded and seeing as new things strike, we want to be in a position to read and react. But the 3 things are Primarily, number one is something we hear every single day with most organizations that we talk to. It's around labor. The second thing is sustainability. And the third is finance, payments oriented. As it comes to labor, I think it's a pretty broad category, all three of which are, mind you, but it's not necessarily just filling the top of the funnel and getting bodies to do the work, but it's the retention, it's the engagement, it's the upskilling, it's the job performance, it's the evaluation, and it's the monotonous, dull, dirty, dangerous jobs and responsibilities that it's really hard for these types of workers to want to enter into the industry to do that type of work. So we talked a little bit earlier about robotics and automation. It's not necessarily seen as, we know we need robotics because robots are the future. It's, we now don't have people to do these types of jobs. What can be automated? What is has the right risk profile? What has something that machines can actually do better than humans? And with the humans we have, we can give them the tools and the resources and the capabilities to focus on creative or things that only humans can do at this point in time, things that they want to be doing. So we look at this in a lot of different lenses and a lot of different categories, but we're talking construction today. It's very consistent with manufacturing and logistics as well, that this is a really hard, challenging time, but it's something that's been around for a while. Labor has been an issue and not something that people assume will be fixed in the near term. The second point around sustainability, I would say when we started Heartland 6 years ago or so, sustainability wasn't something people were really ready to talk about. It wasn't quite understood. There was a lot of greenwashing, and perhaps we're on the precipice of that translating now to real impact. But I think consumer demand, questions, realization that government regulations and those sorts of things are actually starting to have an impact on business performance, meaning like you can win more jobs based on sustainability aspects you've implemented into your business. Procurement practices you have for more sustainable materials will better suit you, and you'll get higher performance out of the developments of the projects that you have post creation or post construction when you can better control all of the energy and all of the the carbon emissions and so on. So I think now, and a lot of it has to do with the large multinational companies being able to pave the way, and consumers having expectations on what their new developments, what their new projects need to incorporate. We now, in the construction and in the development of those processes, have to keep them included. And then the last element to touch on really quickly is payments and financing. I think it's pretty well known, excuse me, that the flow of cash from owner to individual laborer through the layers in the construction process can take quite some time and can be challenging. And you have different verification practices and processes to ensure that each layer of the development, all the way from the individual contributor to the subcontractor to the general contractor or prime, all the way up to the owner and developer, you have to pass certain layers. And then ultimately the groups at the bottom that need the cash the most, that are having to spend out of pocket for materials, for labor, for equipment, for maintenance in order to deliver on these projects, only to get paid 60, potentially even 90 plus days later, makes it that much more complicated to run these businesses. And as layers in between, it's becoming an interesting conversation to say, how can we be a better construction manager or a better developer, in a sense that we can attract better subcontractors or keep people engaged and working more consistently and following that cash flow and following those payments in a more effective way. So I think there's been a lot in and around that space specifically, but nothing that's quite hit the nail on the head and really taken off. But I do believe that across multiple industries is something you're seeing with logistics and manufacturing as well. It's something that will continue to get a lot of attention because there's a lot of pain points in all different layers. And when you're talking about transfers of money, there's a lot of attention to that and becomes a major priority.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So Austin, is there anything else you would like to add?
I don't know that there's anything net new to add to that. I would say that pretty well sums up a lot of the trends that we're kind of keeping a pulse on. One thing I would add to the labor point is just really the recognition of the situation, right? It's one of the main objections that most industrial companies might have, say 5, 10, 15 years ago, was really this one that came out of pride for the nature of the work that was being done, for the hard work that went into it, right? This objection that was like, we do not want a robot replacing this job. I'm doing this job. I love my job. I have a lot of pride associated with that. There's a very clear recognition in the market that the tide has turned and there are just less people to do the work. So let's start having a conversation around what jobs do you not want to do anymore, right? And how are the trends in the market and the products that are coming out, how can they alleviate some of those positions to put those same individuals in more high value or higher production situations that can have a greater impact on the business? Maybe they're safer, maybe they're a little less monotonous, and maybe at the end of the day, those individuals that were once filled with pride over those roles are filled with the same pride. They've transitioned onto a different space. So I think that is one trend and one lens that we're looking at things through. That seems it's a matter of if, or it's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a question from audience. I'm going to ask you this, and then we'll go back to Noelle and Randy for the question about trends. So Danius, I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing your name, if I'm butchering your name, if I'm pronouncing it right. Godavicius is asking, he's saying, thank you for sharing the stories. So the question is for Heartland. What maturity level do you invest in? Do you invest in companies outside Middle West?
Sure. So I can answer that one on behalf of us. We invest in companies located anywhere. We don't have a specific mandate to where the startups are located that we invest in. Our mandate is, can they plug into the LP network, the corporate relationships that we have in the Midwest? Are they in a position where they are serving the corporations that make up our community in a way that addresses real problems? So the Heartland focus is actually more oriented around where our corporate network is, not at all related to where the companies are that we invest in. On the other question you asked is what maturity level? It's typically Series A and earlier. So we've invested pre-seed, seed bracket, seed plus, Series A. What that means for us is that you have clarity of vision of a product that's ready to be tested in market, that serves a very specific problem. And then we can utilize the insights and the expertise that we have from end buyers to help validate product market fit. So you might have a MVP out, you might have a minimum marketable product, or you might have a commercially ready to launch product and you're just looking to rescale sales and business development. And that's really where we're looking to come in and be the business development co-pilot on your go-to-market strategy.
Perfect. And you only invest in construction tech, not design or engineering.
So we would, depending on the fit with our LPs. So I say it broadly that it is up and down the value chain throughout all of these industries. So we do have designers, developers, architects, civil engineers, general contractors, subcontractors, everything in between. What we really look for is the right fit, and I broadly use construction as the catch-all, but that's just not accurate.
Got it. Great, thanks so much. So I'll go back with the same question that I asked Mark and Austin. So what are some of the emerging trends that you see, and how you think it's impacting construction?
Absolutely. First thing that comes to mind for me that I'm always incredibly curious about is AI, artificial intelligence. And in a sense, to piggyback on what Mark said in terms of key areas in the industry that need addressing and further tech enablement is obviously labor, sustainability, and payment processing. In those three alone, along with every other aspect of our industry, AI has the potential to further streamline or really provide more efficiency to every aspect of it. And when I think about what AI can do, speaking specifically about labor, there's an opportunity for artificial intelligence there to build models to understand for each specific role that we have a requirement for within our business, what are the key competencies that we're looking for? And to use your data model to identify those across all of the personnel that you're actually looking at. In terms of sustainability, there's factual raw data out there that we can use AI to identify the best practices, the best materials, the best locations, etc., to utilize as part of our sustainability model, as part of our scheme to achieve LEED Gold, Platinum, whatever that may be. And same for the payment processing. We can use AI. The payment, speaking from experience, the payment application process is very painstaking throughout the industry, chasing your subcontractors, getting your affidavits, getting your everything that you need to have a full and complete process. We can use artificial intelligence to streamline that process further. Even for ourselves in our sales enablement infrastructure that we're building, understanding what is successful for a company, what is unsuccessful, and using and implementing AI to teach people to continue down the right path, to hit all the right data points, to make the most frequent amount of contacts with your prospect, your client, to make sure that ultimately there is the best chance for successful outcome in any pursuit. And we can see AI being implemented across the industry, in the field, in the office, all over the place, and we can see a greater level of adoption, both from construction companies and also in the technology field or in the startup field like myself. So really curious to see how AI continues to develop and its level of adoption in the industry, and I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Great. And what do you think is the barrier to using AI in the products that we use? Because living in the Bay Area and actually being married to an AI person, I'm surrounded by AI people, and they always keep talking about the abundance of information that you need in order to develop your model. So you need millions of something. And in our industry, it's a lot about like secrecy and competition. So a lot of time people don't have access to a lot of database. Companies are not sharing those data. So how do you think we can overcome that, or if it's really a challenge?
Huge barrier, obviously. We come from a very unique industry in that almost every single project is unique. We never really build the same thing twice. So we're not looking at data points. If you build a car, for example, it's a manufacturing process where you can identify data points and really build upon those. In our industry, it's more so after each successful project or after each project, whether it's successful or not, what you're taking to the next one and you're selling to your client is your experience and your capability to actually deliver the next project. So our first barrier to adopting artificial intelligence is our inability to repeat the same process over and over again. I like to think that if it's repeatable, it's predictable. And the closer we can get to actually understanding in our processes, whether or not we're building the same building over and over again, what is repeatable? For example, what's repeatable in our sales process? What's repeatable in our recruitment process? What's repeatable in our payment application process? And if we can understand those repeatable processes, data points, build a data model around it so it understands from company to company, general contractor to subcontractor, what are the key identifiers that we can extrapolate from that, and build our data model to say, if we identify these key data points over the course of a sample of 100 companies, what's the correct process that we should enact on top of that? So the first step for us is just another level of investment. And I think AI we're at the bleeding edge of it. There's still a long way to go before our industry fully adopts it. But once we're able to have a level of investment and show true value, I think there's a huge opportunity there. Like I said, we're at the bleeding edge, but we're still at the precipice of moving on to the next step. I think there's tremendous opportunities there.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Noel, for sharing that. So, Randy, what are the trends that you see in the
Yeah,
space?
Well, Mark, I was glad to hear you mention the payment process, and I don't know that I would have thought of that in a tech conversation, but it's very true. It's a huge problem in the industry, and looking forward to seeing. We know there's some platforms out there that definitely function there, but if there's something in the works or out there that's really going to make a huge change in that process, that would be great for the industry and great for the small guys that are at the bottom of the project tree that often finance millions of dollars of work. So that would be a great development. Things I see, I think our visualization software, whether that be building information modeling or whether that be VR, AR, starting to be used in some different ways. We're starting to see it used to help end users see not only the end state of a project, but if it's an existing campus and it's going to impact them during construction, utilizing that to help convey what the expectations are midstream. So we're starting to see using those tools just in a different way, which has been pretty exciting and really impactful for our clients. Almost everybody has mentioned, some type of robotics. There definitely is a challenge with you can't take people's jobs away necessarily. However, there is a huge labor shortfall in this country. So we have to figure out ways, and there's some firms out there looking at how do they augment the craft force, not necessarily replace them, and or are there things that can just be replaced? The layout robots, things like that might be good tools there that don't necessarily create those illusions of people losing their opportunity. So I think for me, the real disruptors are going to be in the field, the things that help us deal with that manpower shortage that is real in our industry and is probably one of the biggest challenges we have in the foreseeable future.
Awesome, thank you. And then how do you see these trends affecting your business? Can you tell us about your experience, if you use any tool or any technology that affected your business in a certain way, or how you see it with the future, technologies that you're adopting?
Yeah, so I think now for us, technology we're using today that are impactful for us are taking our models to the next level, and I keep going back to how do we augment a workforce that is short. One of the things we do is we're prefabricating more and more of building components. From the tech side of that, it goes down to more detailed models, and we're seeing different trades utilize 3D modeling. Historically, it's been the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades as well as structural trades. Now we're seeing drywall trades model their work because they're either pre-cutting their material or they're prefabricating their material because they can't put 100 people on that project. They only have 75 or they only have 50. So they have to get creative on how they do that. So we're seeing that happen today. I think moving forward, we'll see that continue to move through different all of the trades as we solve the problem that's upon us. And then with really one of our challenges has always been we manage so much information, and the general public sees construction as very blue collar, and it is, but there's so much project management engineering in the background that's there, and the amount of information that a project engineer, assistant project manager manages on a daily basis is huge. So how do we use platforms to help us manage that better? Not only to make those individuals' jobs, and I hate to say easier, but more, let them concentrate on their core duties, which are to manage risk, manage schedule, keep clients happy, but they have this information they have to manage too. So how do we make that easier? Tons and tons of platforms out there addressing that. Some address a single task. Many try to address everything, and many are in the middle. It's going to be exciting to see what those processes look like in the future because there's more players in that arena than ever before.
Yeah, just one more quick question along the same thought. So you mentioned prefab and modular building. So is it something new that you are working on? You've always been, building prefab buildings. Now there are more technologies to use in the process.
It's not new necessarily, but it's becoming more and more prominent. Really started out on really large mega projects, and now it's on projects of all sizes. And there's we are seeing it absolutely more, and there's many other benefits in addition to helping us manage the labor shortfall in the industry, but from quality to schedule and many others. So we are seeing that increase in going beyond the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades where we really saw it start.
Yeah, that's very exciting because it's also helping people building more sustainable buildings. And I've noticed that on AEC Plastic, our platform, there are more and more companies that are helping companies and individuals with prefab and modular buildings. And we had to actually build a separate category for that. Now we have a category as prefab and modular buildings. So they're like some 3D, printing companies that are helping you build like ADUs, like units in your backyard, like prefab, and like very small scale, and then to large scale. Like there's Intelligent City in Canada, there are a couple of companies in Germany that are working on like huge projects, all prefab. And it's very exciting because it's less energy, less carbon footprint.
Absolutely. It'll be fun to watch that evolve over the next 10 years or so.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So I think we have one more question from the audience. Let's see. So Rami is saying, great talk. Thanks for sharing. So one of the questions I'll share, which was mentioned more towards the early part of the call. So when mentioning risk mitigation being a priority for tech being able to solve, what specific process are you seeing as solutions that addresses this? So I guess the question for everyone, risk mitigation, and if there is any specific process that you've seen in this space.
Personally, I've not seen anything that manages the entire risk management process where there is tech enablement, risk registers, we're able to treat, transfer, terminate, or simply tolerate risks. But I think when you look at the overall AEC tech industry, that is one of the core functions of technology. If you're streamlining an existing process, if you're utilizing robotics to line out your floor, your drywall, whatever it may be, because of that efficiency, you're inherently managing risk. You're inherently minimizing the opportunity for losing fee, for affecting your labor, no matter what it may be. I don't think there is one single or predominant risk management technology application, but I do think that any successful AEC adoption of technology is inherently managing that risk all across the board.
Yeah, totally. So any other comments?
Yeah, I can definitely add on to that. We specifically, we do have a portfolio company that is really kind of built around the premise of risk mitigation. Where they're starting out is really the handoff that takes place between the architectural firms and the general contractors, right? There are a lot of drawings and documents that an architectural firm will put together that may have errors or omissions that are not identified out of the gate or before the hammer meets the nail. But through a platform that they've developed, they're using kind of optical character recognition to analyze the documents and surface errors or omissions that could be present, and letting the general contractor know, hey, these are the red flags associated with you're missing 12 doors there, and then cross-referencing those drawings and those documents specifically with scheduled documents. It's a really interesting product to see general contractors and architects provide feedback on it, because it can be polarizing at times, right? Because some of those relationships between architectural firms and general contractors, they do experience a lot of mistakes, and analyzing those documents and mitigating that risk out of the gate can down the line provide a ton of value in the forms of tens of millions of dollars in some cases of errors that that should have never taken place. So it's taking, optical character recognition, that type of technology, and applying it to the construction industry in a very specific way that'll mitigate risk. Those are the types of things that we're continuing to see come across the desk, whereas it could be a long time before we entirely eliminate paper from the construction industry, right? But how can we really maximize the technology that's available to us to make sure that there are not errors that are existing within those documents?
Yep, definitely.
I have one thing to add to that too, a bit separately, and this might resonate with you, Noel and Randy, but I hear often that projects aren't complete until litigation is complete and the lawyers are paid, right? So the process of companies like OpenSpace or Struction Site that are capturing, day by day, step by step visualization that Randy pointed out earlier, are giving you time tracking, real pictures of what happened. So when it does come time to litigate, debate, argue, see who's responsible for what, all the necessary change orders that go away, you can use photo captures, video, saying this is what really happened, this was the date, it's timestamped. You can capture a lot of those issues before they become issues, right? You know exactly where you stand at all point, and you can reference back to them when it does come time to finish paying off the lawyers. So there are loads of ways that I think risk mitigation can tactically be addressed, but also deliver a lot of value to you in the day-to-day operation, making sure you're staying on sequence and on schedule, right? So there's plenty of solutions out there that take this as a real priority. It's an insurance product to a certain extent.
Yeah. Yep, totally. Randy, is there anything else you would like to add?
I would just add, really every process has inherent risk. And so really every application we utilize, be it schedule, be it, we use one of the products that was just mentioned on the 3D capture, be it our project management software, document management software, everything we touch is really, it's all about managing the associated risk and staying ahead of things. And I would argue that we use that technology to avoid litigation and not for litigation. But no, nothing else to add other than that.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. We are at 1 hour. It's 12. So it was a great conversation. I personally really enjoyed all the insights and all the great points. The video will be saved on our YouTube channel. Thanks again. Thanks to our audience. And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having us.
Cheers. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, guys.